Let's talk about the next episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Chicago, May 1920. This is the second half of what was aired in the US as Indiana Jones and the Mystery of the Blues, which are the previous episode and this episode just, cut together and with Harrison Ford as middle-aged Indy in bookends. Just like the previous one, this original version also has the George Hall Old Indy bookends. This time, his grandson Spike has attracted the wrath of the neighbors because he's playing very loud music in a shed in the back garden, and Old Indy comes out and he tells another story set in Chicago 1920. This time, it's a murder mystery. Young Indy's boss at the restaurant gets murdered, and Indy teams up with his old friend Ernest Hemingway and his roommate from the college, Elliot Ness, to investigate and find out what's going on. And overall, it's decent. It's a fun episode. Again, it's something different than the last episode. They do feel very similar. Again, makes sense that you would want to cut them together into Mystery of the Blues. I get that. But again, this one is also self-contained. And works better as a 45-minute standalone. I stand by that. That's the case with most of these young indie adventures. So the big thing I took away from this episode, Ernest Hemingway being in this, makes sense because he's established to be a friend of Indy. The thing is, that only happens in a later episode because again, this show is not in chronological order. Old Indy is just telling stories from whenever, like he's just jumping all over the place. We don't even have like his end from, his time in World War I. He just jumped straight to college in 1920. So Hemingway being in this is interesting, but we only get the backstory technically, how they became friends and, know each other in a later episode. And then Elliot Ness being Indy's roommate. That was established in the last episode, to be fair. But, I don't know. On the one hand, they are setting up that he's like, he knows his stuff in like investigating and crime and he wants to be like a police guy. Makes sense. But he's also portrayed as a complete dork and a comedic relief, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But it does make fun following this trio around when they investigate. And the twist of who the murderer is interesting. Just a little spoiler, I guess, but yeah, it ties into real history again. It's a good episode. It's not my favorite. I think I still prefer the previous one, which is funny because like nothing happens in it besides Indy befriending like a jazz band and playing the saxophone, but that's how it is sometimes. Still, I would recommend Chicago, May 1920 as well. And next time, we're gonna talk about the most famous part of the Young Indy Chronicles, which is the Harrison Ford cameo in the bookends for Mystery of the Blues.